Afternoon. Welcome everybody to ClayChat. I speak to Ann Marais today. She's going to take us through her journey. She's got lots and lots of pictures to share with us and a history that is just so interesting. And I've admired her work so much, but now that there's more background information, I'm even more excited. So Ann, I look forward. You go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much, Rika, for allowing me this opportunity. It's not something I've done before, so it's something quite new and strange to talk about myself and not other people. But I thank you for what you're doing. I've watched other Zoom meetings of other play chats, and it's really, really nice to have something like that. So a big, big thank you to you first. You wanted to know something about my history, my personal history, which I'll give an introduction before I start talking about the work. I was born in Yangon, which was called Rangoon in those days, in Myanmar, which was called Burma in those days. And at the time, there was terrific political turmoil. Aung San Suu Kyi's father, Aung San Suu Kyi being the great human rights activist that we all probably know about worldwide, her father was shot in prison at that time. And my sisters were not allowed out of the property for 3 months. I was a baby, so of course I didn't know anything about it. But eventually we left, and my father arranged it, and we left in a flying boat. And I remember my eldest sister remembers it, said that she was terrified because there was water rushing past the windows. She'd never been in a flying boat. Anyway, we ended up in Kenya and Uganda in East Africa, first in Nairobi for a short time and then Uganda. And it was in Uganda that I grew up. And I realize now, in retrospect, that I had the most incredible, magical paradise to which to grow up. There were very few people, there was no pollution, there was no such thing as plastic, it just wasn't any plastic. And I grew up and absorbed all the sounds and the smells and the scents and the different types of vegetation and just the different landscapes without even knowing about it, as you don't as a child. I had a pet chameleon, which was not strange. Quite a few people had pet chameleons. Didn't like feeding it. I had to catch flies for it, squash the flies for it. It wasn't very nice, but anyway, I did it. And I used to like sitting in the mango tree, and I used to play in the mud, with the red mud, which we called murren there. But my strongest memories, I suppose, the most ones that imprinted in my mind, was the sailing we used to do on Lake Victoria, in the northern part of Lake Victoria, because my parents had a yacht. And we used to sail amongst the islands, and they were completely and utterly unspoilt. They were uninhabited, except for a few fishermen when they dug out canoes would come along. And there were crocs and hippos around and about, but they didn't worry so much to me as the huge spiders, big things. I was terrified of them. I mean, I was only a little pookie, so they were very frightening for a little girl like me. But I had a very free and wonderful, unbelievable today, to the kind of childhood I had. Anyway, I didn't have a particularly tremendous art background. The only sort of person who does anything art in the background is my eldest sister, who writes children's stories, very funny ones. And a book of hers published called The Botter's Gang, very funny indeed. But I did used to take myself to art exhibitions just by myself. I didn't, when I was a bit older, when I was a teenager. I did do art at school, and art was one of my Cambridge O-level subjects. But that's really about all. After school, I joined my father in Malaysia. We lived in Kuala Lumpur, but we used to go down to Singapore. And it was the old Singapore. It was fascinating. It was so interesting. It was like something out of a 18th century novel. Very unlike the Singapore today, which is these huge, high, tall, concrete, sterile buildings. It's a very beautiful city. It's a very well-run city, but it was much more interesting in those days, I can assure you. Anyway, after that, my mother was in South Africa, and so was my eldest sister and her husband, family. So I came to Cape Town, where I stayed for a couple of years, but I wasn't terribly keen on it. The situation that I found here. It wasn't really something that I was used to. My father had introduced me to geopolitics. So I'm living in different countries and different, coming to contact with different cultures and different peoples. My vision was quite broad, and I didn't like the kind of restrictions that were here. So I took myself off to England for a couple of years. And it was there that I became a more politicized, which I will talk about later. But after a couple of years, you know, I always say that Mother Africa has your soul in her grip. And when she has it, she doesn't let it go. So I missed the huge, wide open spaces of Africa that I'd grown up in East Africa, and just everything that is wonderful about the African continent. So I came back. And when I came back, not long after I came back, a friend said to me, oh, she's going to pottery lessons. So I said, oh, that sounds nice. I'd like to do that. So I did for 6 months, and I enjoyed it very much. I made the most atrocious, appalling, horrible, horrid pots, which I thought were wonderful. But anyway, soon after that, I went to Johannesburg, and my next door neighbor was taking lessons with John Edwards, the famous John Edwards studio, and I persuaded her to teach me how to throw, which she did. And I actually attended a glaze course there. I think her name was Peggy Klein, maybe. But the thing that I remember most is that I met John Shirley, who everybody knows so well, and who's quite a significant figure in ceramics, I say, and has been ever since the beginning. And I was very lucky that I happened to be in Johannesburg, this was 1972, when they had the first public meeting of APSA. And of course, I went along. I didn't know anybody. I was a newbie. I just remember Tim Morris. That was about the only person that I sort of, he didn't know me, but I knew him. And then strangely enough, I came back to Cape Town soon thereafter. And in fact, I then attended the very first meeting of APSA in Cape Town, which was chaired by Peggy and Reg Clay, the chairperson, Lady Germain. And the other big luminaries were people like Maxie Heyman, Helene Elliott, Valia Roseman. Rosemary Sellers was probably there, but I didn't know her at the time. I'm sure she would be there. She must have been there. And by this time, pottery was taking quite a big chunk of my life. I had a studio, and I lived down the road from Chaim Rabinowitz. And he was very sweet to me as a newbie. And of course, he was the big guru in those days, and everybody was, you know, interested in what he was doing, and everybody was trying to emulate him. Not everybody, but most people. But I had an electric kiln, and I couldn't fire my work like they did with those beautiful, rich, deep reduction fired lasers. I couldn't do it. And in this first image here, you will see what I was producing. You can actually see the influence that Chaim had and people like that. These two casserole dishes, they have sort of a vague resemblance to maybe somebody like Chaim, or from him, Michael Cardew, or whoever. So it was in that milieu. And then a friend said to me, would I like to come to her? She was doing raku firing. So I said, oh, that sounds very interesting, because I'm insatiably curious. So I went along. And it was amazing. Here was something that was exciting and completely different. And it had this wow factor. And I was hooked. And that became the major expression that I had for the next 22 years, virtually. I got a raku kiln, which I will show you now, if I can just move the picture on. I've got this picture because you can see me lifting the kiln off. I also built a brick kiln for sawdust firing. We did sawdust firing as well. And you can see Rob Nairn, who was an extremely well-known and loved Zen Buddhist, who was a pupil of mine. And he was loving doing this sawdust firing as well. And I was teaching by this stage. And strangely enough, I taught Hannes van Sale and Angela Gilbert how to make glazes, basically. Because in those days, you couldn't buy glazes. There wasn't the cornucopia that you've got today. You had to do everything yourself. Anyway, so I've known Hannes that long and Angela that long. And then I'm going to show you, this is one of the first exhibitions of Cape potters before it became Cape Apsa, I think. You can see there's a raku fired plate there, and some sawdust pots on this exhibition. Some very interesting work was on that exhibition. They were my few humble little pots. But then I want to show you some of my early work. As you can see, it's very much in the style of conventional little pots and raku fired. And on the left-hand side are some porcelain, because I also worked in porcelain. But that was quite different. I didn't raku fire porcelain. This was all stoneware clay that I raku fired. And then I started to branch out a little bit and do my own designs with wax resistors, you can see there. And but I also did big jars like this, which are raku fired. The one in the middle we've still got, which belongs to Andre. That little white blob jumped from one pot to that pot, and it was quite extraordinary. And Andre was very excited, so I gave it to him as a present, and he's still got it. It's his pot. And then I also did porcelain, as you can see, but these are crackle glaze. They're not raku fired. They're celadon, and they're very conventional forms, as you can see. But then after a bit, I began to find my own voice, and I started to do more sort of organic work, which is a thread that goes throughout my work, as you will see as we go along. In 1983, I was lucky enough to win the Pottery Lotto, the Premier Award of APSA, as it still was then. But I want to show you, this was one of the award-winning pieces. And it's the overlapping torso scales that I'd like you to remember. This is probably the best of the three pieces, which incidentally is missing from the Coral Brick collection. I don't know where it is now. The other two are still there, but that one went missing quite a long time ago, I believe. As a result of that, I was asked to do a commission by Continental China to produce special collection of works that they could sell to their prestigious clients. And I made 25 of these bead pots. They were very large, and I made them in 3 weeks, and it was a huge amount of work. I had bruises on my muscles from throwing these large pieces. I suppose they're about 35, 40 centimeters high. I can't remember. I only know where there are two of them. Andre has one, and the other one is actually in the Clay Museum. I don't know what happened to the rest of them. And then I started to move on. As I said, I was interested in other areas of life and other cultures and people, and I began to do a lot of work. This is in the 90s, I suppose, early 90s, or perhaps before that. And it was quite difficult to do that cloth around his face, because it was a floppy, wet piece of clay, and they're quite difficult to manipulate. And I had to manipulate it around the face, and then the turban, which was also floppy, and I had to manipulate that on. So it was quite a tricky thing to do. But anyway, I managed. And then this is a samurai. I was absolutely in love with all the marvelous warrior regalia. And so I did this raku slab sculpture. It's not 3-dimensional, it's actually 2-dimensional. It doesn't, there's nothing at the back. And that's just to show you some more intricate works. I like highly decorated pieces, as well as very simple pieces, but I enjoy doing all these designs of my own. This is as you can see, it's butterfly-shaped raku piece, slab sculpture, I called them. I always did the faces in case the mask, which was joined later, didn't work, if it split or something. So I made sure that I did the faces before I joined the mask. And the mask is as you can see, it's unglazed. It's the butterfly design. Here is a raku teapot, mudfish, which are important motifs in a particular African tribe in the west of Africa. I can't remember the details now, so long ago, but you can see my love of decoration. I'm going to show you around the piece. That's the top, and then the front, and then the back, all raku fired. These slab sculptures, this is I did a lot of this type of work. This is a tribute to Kathy Kollwitz at the front of the piece, and that is the back. it's quite strange that I had these three-dimensional things at the back. And I kind of imagined her, that's her as a young woman, perhaps. I don't know. That's just the way it was in this particular piece. And this is me. I was invited to do a workshop in Namibia in 2001, I think. And this is one of the pieces that they took for publicity or whatever. But I want you to keep in mind this cloth at the back there, which is from Zaire, because I'm going to show you a piece that I reinterpreted later on. And so that is the beginning of my introduction. I'm now going to talk about, I divided this talk into 3 parts. And the first part is material and process, because that is the most significant part, really, of what I do. It defines what I do, the textures, the colors, the combination of different things. And I'm going to show you a series of works that illustrate this. In this particular piece, I love very complicated, messy, spontaneous surfaces. I find them interesting and complex. And in this piece, there's the contrast between this figure, this white, pure figure with a smooth texture, and the very encrusted, chrysalis-like form it's appearing out of. And it's the sort of idea is that it's like it's just been born, this creature, and it's looking in wonder at the world around, and it raises sort of existential question of what will be its fate. And it is really this combination of textures that gives idea a rise to this meaning of what will happen, and the fact that it's newly born. And I like to use lots of different materials. This, I think, is iron oxide and probably some manganese. And they're done spontaneously, usually in the greenware, mostly in the greenware, and I just do them spontaneously. But this is a very quiet piece, and so there's not a huge amount of erupting texture in this particular piece. And this one the same. I think that's probably manganese dioxide, which I would have put on in the greenware before I bisfired it. And here, these creatures, and all my creatures are imaginary for the most part, although they do represent seemingly bears and rabbits and so forth. You can see there's stones there, which I like. I use all kinds of materials, you know, even dirt in the ground in front of this dirt road. I'll go and pick up some dirt road and just play and throw it around and play with it, because it's exciting. I want to use any sort of materials. I'm always curious. You know, sculptors are foragers. We forage. We forage for everything. And it's amazing what you come up with. And here's another one. There's stones there. There's a bit of yellow underglaze, and then there's other stuff, and there's red grog and all sorts of things. It enlivens the surface. These surfaces have a tremendous vitality and life, which is something that I enjoy. And now I'm going to show you the close-ups and then the full figure, but that you can see the deep gouging and the vigorous agitation and manipulation of the surface of the form, whatever form it happens to be. This is the full face. This is the full sculpture, which I actually still have. And that what I showed you just now is the area just below the eye on the left, between the nose and the crease on the side there. And this probably took me about 3 hours to color, because I put on color and then I take it off. I don't like it. I put it on and I take it off and I rub it and I go on and on and on until I'm happy, and then I'll stop. But it's like painting. It takes time, and you just have to go with it, and you have to be in the work and very intuitive as you're doing it. I always think of him as a Medici. My friend the other day said, no, he's more like one of the Borgias, the cruel Borgias. As I was saying, I like to manipulate surfaces quite heavily. I find them interesting and complex, and I'm showing you a few images of close-ups and then the full piece. This is the close-up of this. This is a very strange creature. I don't know what it's all about. I still have it. I don't know what it is. To this day, I don't know what it is. Sometimes I do things, I don't know what they are, but it's strange enough one of my favorite pieces. This is also a close-up. As you can see, there's a mug with a hand grasping it, like the mug is welded to the body, and it's a very poignant and special sculpture. This is the full piece. You can see the head is an animal and the body is a human, and it's actually a tribute to Paul de Jong. The head was made at McGregor in a workshop, and the body was made. It's a long story in my studio. It's a long story which I won't talk about now, but I'm happy to say that Andre Hess in London has this sculpture, and I'm really happy about that because I have a very high regard for the intelligence and intellect of Andre Hess, so I'm really happy that he lives with Andre. This is a fellow, I think he's French. He was bought by a Frenchman, and he's gone to France. And you can see the heavy textures that I use, and I like the ice blue eyes and the rosy cheeks and the color in the hair. I quite enjoy that fellow. As I say, that the external is often an indication of the internal, and this very agitated surface gives some kind of indication of interior dis-ease in the figure. By contrast, here is a completely different figure, calm and smooth and white, but also very, very enigmatic. I don't know who she is. I still have her too, actually, surprisingly. So I do a lot of different contrasts for different reasons. I wanted a quiet, calm, still figure, so different from the others. Again, an indication of interior turmoil. There's 3 images. This was in an exhibition in 2010 at Art B Gallery when I had a solo called Journey. And there was a section where there was a lot of dis-ease in the figures. And this was the beginning. That split is deliberate, showing that the figure is, it's sunk apart. And then it starts to collapse. And yet, clay is this miraculous material that no matter what you do to it, how you bend and twist it, it still remains an integrity of form, which is really wonderful. It is an amazing material, clay. And then finally the figure collapses altogether. It's actually, I did virtually collapse it. And I fired it like that. And all those pieces are sold. Some very kind people bought them. But it just shows what one can do with clay, expressively in the form and in the coloring, as well as the content. This is interesting in a sort of, again, talking about different textures, the glazed black head and then a very heavily textured face with stones and all sorts of things, like I told you I like to do, a bit of hair. But what is interesting is that little yellow eye. And, you know, to use things like yellow and red and gold, if you use them in small quantities, they're usually very powerful. If you use them overall, then they actually lose some of their power and can become just garish. I'm about to disprove my words, but never mind. Usually that's the case. This is was a smoke-fired piece, a platter, and the soft sort of muted tones, the pinks and oranges and blacks of the smoke firing was a very good foil for this gold-lusted mythical ram's head in a piece. So it's again using different textures and different colors. Well, here's what I was talking about, using a lot of gold. This is a very hierarchical slab sculpture. And you can see the different black, which is unglazed against the face, and the chameleons, which are also unglazed. And the decoration on the other side of the lower face is an Ethiopian cross. And then there are sort of, it's almost like North African jewelry designs as well as Celtic. So it's quite eclectic. But I think the gold works very well in the sort of giving us a ritualistic sort of feel to it. And the other side is completely different. I haven't photographed it at all because I thought it was enough already. But that's one of the things that I do. Here again, completely different. Porcelain, incised and applied decoration, totally different. So I did do a variety of work at that stage. Not much of this, but I did do some of it. And again, the same thing, porcelain, a free flowing slab with incised and applied decoration, but also color. And it was all very spontaneously done, not premeditated. Here is again completely different, and it's very tight. The black unglazed part is really a tribute to the thousands and thousands of wood carvers throughout Africa, the centuries who carved the most amazing things, beautiful pieces of wood that the world doesn't know too much about. And there are some extraordinary works of art all over the continent. So that's sort of what I call a pedestal platter. I used to call pedestal platters. This one is also the same pedestal platter, but it's Raku 5, and using motifs that are often sort of have an African sort of context to them. And that is the bottom of this piece. I always decorate the bottom as well, because that's 50% of the piece. So you can't just do the top and not the bottom. It's like only putting half your clothes on. So you've got to do the whole thing. This teapot, this is a Raku teapot, and it's homage to the beadwork of Africa, which is a hugely strong cultural motif or way of decorating and making cultural artifacts, if you want to know, which still continues today and is developing tremendously. This is my own design. It's not anybody else's. I just do these as I go along, and I made it up as I went along. This is the side. This is the top. This is the front, and that's the back. So it's my sort of interpretation, and like sort of bringing old age. I wanted to at that stage bring African artifacts from the old into the new, into the 21st century. At that stage, I'm talking about the 1990s, before this became very popular, before 1994, when everybody was jumping on a Afrocentric wagon, which was something that I found quite difficult to come to terms with. I'd stopped by then doing this sort of work. This was all off my own back, totally. I told you to remember that cloth that was behind me when I was holding that big shield plate in Namibia. Well, that's Zaire cloth, and you can see that motif that is used there. This is what I've done here, but translated it into a platter. This would have been, I think this was smoke-fired, or I'm not sure if it was rocket-fired. Anyway, again, here is the same sort of thing, tight design, but strange enough, it's porcelain, and it's actually functional. I do some functional work then, a jug and a tea bowl, at least a sugar jug. Very tight design, underglaze colors and a transparent glaze. This is the same thing, but it's looser. This is later, much later. The other one was about 19 something or other, 1990, whatever. This is in the mid-2000s, middle, first or second, about 2016. Very loose designs, also practical, functional work. So, you know, I do shift around quite a lot. I don't want to get stuck in one groove. And then sometimes I'm really, this is another one. This was early. This was 1999 I did this one. So, you know, this work was kind of familiar. Same deal, underglaze stain with a transparent glaze on top. A sort of flowing pedestal platter type form. And then sometimes I just completely let go. And this is just a painting, you know, dog form. It's actually a mug, so it's quite practical, which was unusual for me. You can actually drink coffee out of it, I think. So it's very loose. And so there's a great variety of stuff that I do. I don't just stick to one sort of thing. And this is just a Japanese tea bowl. I think I did it because Ralph Johnson had a 70th birthday exhibition at Ruston Freda and asked some of us to take part. And this was the one that I did, with very much an Oriental aesthetic to it, stoneware fired. Then, just to have a change of scenery and a change of mindset, I decided I would start doing some color for a change that wasn't muted, like what I had been doing with smoke firing and so on. And so I started to use a bit of color and having fun, nothing serious. So I don't know what this rabbit creature is doing, but it took me about 4 hours to actually decorate him. I've only taken this part of him. I haven't got an image of the whole thing. I thought it was enough just to show you that. This one was before it was fired. And I was I don't know who or what he is, but it's very strange. But I just knew that I wanted to have his bright blue ears, that wonderful blue color that Tina Vanderbilt got at Joggers, and it's this glorious lapis lazuli blue. Oh, it's so lovely. This was, I was fiddling around with it, also taking ages to decorate it. I'd put stuff on and then I'd take it off, and I'd put it on and I'd take it off. But the very free form black brush work there is the last thing I do, because once you've done that, you can't disturb that. So you've got to be sure that what you're coloring you've got, you're now done, and this is the final thing. So there's all kinds of decorating applications on things like this. And then this strange creature is completely off the wall and also very colored. I don't know if it's an insect. It might be. I'm not sure. I don't know who or what he is, but anyway, he was a mishmash of all sorts of things, as you can see. But I had fun doing him. It was quite fun. And then to further extend my medium and myself and my ideas and the world around me, I often incorporate mixed media. I do other things. And this little Zen figure was, he's a quite nice fellow, but somehow there was something missing. And in my studio, I've got masses of stuff, and I fiddle around and I play with things and I put things on and take them off. And so you're still creating and you're still doing things to your work. It's not yet finished, and there's something missing. Anyway, I hit upon this marvelous piece of dried kelp that I'd found at Vallis Reserve Park, where we often go. And I thought, and I put it on. And then Andre came home, and I said, "What do you think of this next item?" And he looked and he said, "No, that's stupid." That deflated me totally. But never fear, a little bit later, Henny May popped by. I think he was checking up. I was doing this exhibition, Fragmented Narratives, which is one of the most interesting exhibitions I've ever done, with Wilma Cruz and Helen Dirt in COVID. It was during COVID. Anyway, I showed it to Henny, and he thought it was wonderful. So there we go. I was vindicated. So on it went, got stuck on. And that's what happened. It was exhibited like that. But unfortunately, it's in New Zealand, and you know the New Zealanders don't allow you to import dead things. So I had to chop it off. So he's gone kelpless to New Zealand, which is quite sad, but there we go. This is another multimedia. I think that is probably a seal scapula. I'm not absolutely sure. I think it's a bit big for a seagull, but it's some sea creature's scapula in a lidded pot. This is a porcelain swimmer swimming over a dead sponge, and really it doesn't matter how you look at it, but for me it's sort of an environmental comment about somebody swimming over the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, as we all know, is busy dying, and he's swimming oblivious of the desecration underneath, although I do believe the Australians are trying to revive the Great Barrier Reef where it's dying off. This is just a fun piece. It's just decorative. There's no great message in it. I just like that tassel, you know, luscious tassel, and like so just a innocuous piece with no message or anything to it. And then there was an exhibition at Art B a couple of years ago in Belleville, paper and clay. And I think what they meant was paper on the wall and clay on the plinths. But I took it literally. I thought, oh, paper and clay. Okay, what can I do with paper and clay together? So I made these coats, cloaks, I suppose you'd call them, which took ages. I bought paper. There's a paper. That lion's head is clay, porcelain, and a plaster base, and there's a figure under there. But I didn't show you. I haven't got a photograph of him without clothes on, because I wanted to show you paper and clay. And I had to cut out all these different pieces of paper that I bought at P&B. It took for ages. It was a really laborious job, cutting all this out. Thank God for the BBC World Service, or else I would have been bored out of my skull. So that is a mixture of clay and other media that I've just shown in a few pieces there. And this is a fun piece. This was last year, I think, the head exhibition that Henny organised. This works on 2 levels. First of all, it's she's wearing a sponge fascinator, which is a oblique reference to the women's fashion wearing these fascinators these days on their heads. So, but my lady's got she's got a sponge one. And then fiddling around in the studio as I do, I thought she needed something else. And by chance, I put her on this dried piece of sponge. And oh my word, there we go. She's now got a sponge cape, as opposed to fur capes that they used to wear in the old days, and when there was still lots of fox furs and mink before we killed them all off with humans. So that's a reference to fascinators. It's a reference to women's fashions, but at the same time, it's now very environmentally friendly because I didn't kill anything to put it together. And this is the only time I have used color as a political tool. And I'm sure you will recognize what I mean by that color. And the title of this piece is "We hear your cries, we feel your pain, we smell your fear. Well, that's the end of the first section. I'm now going to talk about how my work changed. I have these major changes suddenly. They long time guess, just have the word gestating, and then suddenly I do them. But before that, I'm just going to show you some other work before I finally get to that. As I said, when I went to Grahamstown in 1979, it was a major turn for me mentally and culturally. Bluntly, I moved from a Western cosmopolitan European environment of Cape Town to a serious engagement with the continent in which I'd spent most of my life, and which shockingly I knew virtually nothing about. My education had been a colonial education, from a colonial point of view, where the map and geography was mostly pink or red, in other words, British colonies. But divorced from this urban environment in Western orientated in Cape Town, Grahamstown was much more authentic. And I looked around me and I realized that I knew nothing about this vast continent in which I'd been living. And so I began a very focused and serious engagement with the great, marvelous, incredible, complex, beautiful arts of Africa. And I spent the next 10 years or more concentrating totally on it. And the crux, highlight of it came for me when we went to see the stone churches that are hewed deep into the rock in Lalibela in Ethiopia. Andre and I went, and it was a wonderful, but it was a very humbling and amazing exhibition that we realized how incredibly ignorant we were about the great history of Africa, and particularly the Ethiopian empire that stretched from West Africa right the way through to Yemen. It was an extraordinary experience. And in exploring African art, it was exhilarating, it was educational, it was enthralling, it was wonderful. And I was doing it alone. There was nobody else doing that sort of work. So it was mostly from books that I looked at. I have some wonderful books on African art. And I wandered all over the continent in my works. I'm just going to show you a few images before I move on to the next big change in my life. This is a Raku freeform bowl with various abstract designs on it, and it's the Islamic hand of friendship in the middle, as you can see. This actually is Raku fired too, and it's sort of, again, there's the Islamic hand of friendship, but there's also the mudfish, which have meaning, and the sea, and I just put it all together as I go along. There's no fixed plan how it works out. But in 1997, I'd been doing Raku fire in 1997. I wanted to move away from Raku, but I didn't know quite how to go about changing things. And I by chance went to a workshop at Art V. I don't remember who the person was. It might have been Christine Gittens or Loretta Espy, I'm not sure. But she gave me the magic process by which I could achieve what I wanted to achieve. And that was that if you burnish very highly your greenware, then after the bisque firing, you can lustrify it with a low fire luster firing, and then do the smoke firing. So that's what I did for about 10 years, from about 97 to 2004, when I had a major change again in my work into the sort of fourth iteration. But these were before that, just before that. This is smoke fired. This is actually based on a split drum, which they have in Zaire. And the half, if you look at half of it, that's actually the shape of the drum. But I opened it out, so I made it so it's now flat, whereas it's actually together, the actual drum in reality. That you can all recognize Zimbabwe ruins, which I loved, and you can see the little landscape behind it. That's just smoke fired. This is Ethiopian cross, smoke fired, lasted in that process I told you of burnishing highly and then luster firing and then smoke firing. And it's a pedestal pattern. That's what it looks like view. This is another one with sort of motifs that are used throughout Africa, also smoke fired. That's the bottom. I always have, there's my stamp. There's always something going on at the bottom. And this is actually the first, I got quite involved with headrests and the connection with the shades. The ancestors is something that interests me greatly. And this was a completely new interpretation in my mind. There's nothing to do, headrests don't look at all like this, but it was that idea, that genre, that expression that I sort of explored a bit. That's the side view. That's the top view. And that is gold luster there. And you can see that that is actually a machete, isn't it? Just a double. It's a because they make amazing jewelry, weapons in Africa, some of them. So it's kind of a mix up of a lot of different ideas and things. Then, just to get back to reality, I thought I would show you a very interesting photograph that I took in 1996 in Grahamstown at the Grahamstown Art Festival, and I invited all the participating potters and ceramic artists to come to our house for an evening. And we had a very jolly evening, as you can see, and I'm sure you can all recognize very well-known figures: Anton van der Merwe, B. Jaffray, Anthea Surretzler, Charmaine Haynes, Stephen Shapiro, Leslie Ann Hoots, Margot Richards, Lily Watson, Mishak, and myself, and so on. And we had a very nice evening. So I just thought, as a sort of to show you what actually coming down to earth, that other people that we were involved in Grahamstown that we come across. Okay, so now this is a whole different ball game altogether. In 1998, I decided that I needed to go and get a formal fine arts education, which I hadn't had. So I went to Rhodes University and I enrolled for a BFA in Rhodes Art School, majoring in sculpture and theory of art. And because although I love pots and vessels and the whole abstract aesthetic of vessels, vessel making, my horizons are much broader and wider than just that aesthetic. I am a chronicler of my culture and what I see around me in the world. But I needed a formal education to express this idea of making work. And so I went to Rhodes, and then I actually carried on after Rhodes, still doing some vessels and those works I just showed you, because there was a lot of pressure for exhibitions. But in 2006, I went to the Cité in Paris, and I had a 2-month residency at the Cité there, which was very wonderful. Just before I left, I made this little figure. I have no idea why I made it. I still don't know why I made it, but I did before I went to Paris. And then off I popped to Paris and had the most amazing time. While I was there, I'm going to just go back to this. Because we were the Cité, you get free passes to all the municipal and national galleries, and it's absolutely wonderful. You can go to the Louvre as much as you want. I spent a lot of time in the Musée d'Orsay because the clay busts of Honoré Daumier, the satirical writer and sculptor, had done they'd just been restored, all the political busts he'd done, which were send-ups of all of them, and they were absolutely wonderful. I spent a lot of time looking at them for quite a few hours. And I then decided that when I came back to South Africa, I was now going to use my sculpture degree, and I was now going to do figurative work. I was done with vessels. And that's what gave me the impetus, because he had all these rough surfaces that I found so interesting and lively. And I wanted to work in that idiom. So I went off to Paris. But when I came back from Paris, that's what I started to do. And I started to become a chronicler of our lives and what I experienced. And this Oki, if you all remember in the old days, they didn't have all these fancy pool equipment. Chaps used to use inner tubes to swim in the pool. This is in a musical pool. So there he is, he's about to jump in. He's a very happy chappy. And so that's what that one is. And this is his mum, middle-aged lady, and she's about to take the plunge. And she's also enjoying life very much and enjoying her swim. This one is it's called Anxious Suitor, and there's this young lady who's being very coy, and it's quite amusing because you don't see young women dressed like that today, do you? They're quite different, but it's fun to do. And I did do some practical functional work. This is the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, which I enjoyed doing very much. There's a Mad Hatter, and there's the whole tea set, milk jug and sugar bowl, and then Mad Hatter himself. And I really enjoyed doing that. Porcelain, black underglaze stain in the grooves, and then black in his cloak and so on, and then a transparent glaze on top. This is called waiting at the bus. We all have periods of life where we're waiting. And this is my sort of observation of life, these following works, just ordinary everyday life, venturing into all kinds of places. Oh, yes, and there's Scandal. This is wonderful Scandal at the pool. I don't know what these two are discussing, but it's obviously very, very juicy and very delicious. There's another one. This is the one that Rika used as the photograph of this work, ClayChat. I don't know what's going on there, but it's very dicey, very juicy and very dicey. And this is also very an interesting conversation. I don't know what's going on. These creatures, they talk in my studio. I don't know what they say. They don't talk to me. They talk to each other. And this is what, it's very noisy and lively in there. This is called Sitting on the Edge, Living on the Edge. And they literally were on the edge. There was an exhibition at Ruston Theatre, and I was given the mantelpiece of the fireplace. So I made figures to fit the theme, and that's who you see there. Who knows what they're, but they're very happy chaps. Clowns make you laugh, but clowns off stage are usually very depressive people. They're not happy at all. These are clowns after the show, as is this one. The pathos of a clown. A diva, she's very, very lovely and adores herself and sings marvelously and is very, very fated and loved. This is a very happy chappy, as you can see. It's actually Andre. Believe it or not, doesn't look like him, but we were in Paris and we had a wonderful dinner. We came back. For some reason, we had quite a lot of wine. He had his belt, I think he was taking it off, and he just put it around his head. Doesn't look like him, but boy, he was a happy chap. So that's Andre. This is a Tunny, and she's just won first prize in the cake competition in the local church hall. And you know, they usually have flowers and things like that. So this is what this lady is. And that's everybody's favorite mum. You know, when you're a child and you hurt, you'd go and bury yourself in your mother's tummy and she'd make you feel better. Well, that's who she is. And this is a mall queen strutting her stuff in Rosebank Mall or wherever. And then this is a photograph of, I just thought you might be interested to see my studio. It was about 2017. I'm obviously about to have a high firing and colouring, all the colouring under glaze oxides there. And that was my studio in Durbanville. It's always pretty messy, as I think a lot of studios are. Mine particularly was. And then I've got a few sort of cool dudes. I don't know who he is. I think maybe he's an architectural graphic designer. He's a very elegant chap. This chap is more down to earth. Maybe he's a QS or something. I'm not quite sure who he is, but he's just observing the building. I don't know. It's for the viewer to decide what he is and who he is. And this is also a cool dude, very cool dude. He's just observing, and he thinks he's quite fun. He really is. This one is the same deal. This was very difficult to do. That leather jacket was also a very loose piece of clay, completely loose. It was soft, wet. And I had to drape it around the figure and at the same time put a bit of it over his finger so that it could stay there when I fired it. That is one of the most difficult sort of technical things that I've done, but fortunately it worked. It was a leather jacket. And I think it was probably a playback to long ago when Marilyn Levine in America did those incredible leather suitcases, and you couldn't tell them from the real thing. So this is the same thing. It was, and you can see the tears in the leather, what have you. This is, in a way, it's social commentary about who runs the world. Businessmen, big businessmen, the military, and then the street man, demonstrator or football supporter. Kind of a bit of a feminist statement. This is a European swallow. You know, they come out in June, at least in January, February, from the cold European winter. And this is, he's just about to go to the sea. And this is his very elegant wife. She just sits on the sidelines with her glasses and doesn't participate. This one's called Self-Satisfied, as you can see. You can read the expressions for yourself. I did the 7 Deadly Sins, and this is the figure of pride. This is a small-time crook. You saw earlier when I showed you a detail of a face, that I showed you the big face, and I said somebody said he's the bourgeois. Well, this is his sidekick, a small-time crook. He lives in Port Elizabeth by now. These two dudes, they just sort of hang out, you know, whatever. They are what they are, with tattoos and so on. There's a wise guy. The eyes watching for the rain chance all the time. And this is in the middle of state capture. And this greasy individual, his hand, which you can't see, is holding a little bit of dosh in his hand. Not a very good fellow. Different altogether, a Zen figure. Quiet Zen figure. I like that piece very much. Porcelain. Contemplation again. Quiet attitude. This is Ship of Fools. There was an exhibition called Bosch in Africa, curated by Sandra Honnekoon at Woordfeest in Stellenbosch. And I did a bone sculpture, which I enjoyed very much. It took me a long time, and I really enjoyed it very much. So then a little bit later, I decided to do one in clay. And so this is Bosch in Africa again, but this time in clay, based on Bosch's painting. This is a lot of people today, all of us, hiding a lot of craziness, perhaps, in this crazy world. I don't know. You can make up your mind. This is also a sort of anxious piece. This was in this 2010 solo exhibition. This figure is encased and captured by his own fears. There were 50 specters in there. They were slipcast, and they symbolize our fears, our anxieties, our dis-ease, our disquiet, whatever. And he sits in the middle of all of them. This is called Everyman. I made it in 2010, and he's just ordinary bloke. He just wears ordinary clothes, as you can see. He's a little bit overweight, which sort of indicates that maybe he's not going to go very far in life. He's just an ordinary, he's every man. And all he really wants is a home and food on the table and education for his kids. And this was made in response to 2007, the beginning of the migratory people from war-torn countries to Europe. It was before the huge onslaught. It was early on, coming from countries which were in enormous trouble, mainly in the Middle East. And it was made with great tenderness. And as I said, this dude is a real person. He's the only one that I've ever done from real life. And I've done him about 5 times, which I'm going to show you. I saw in this magazine, and I thought, no, this is just too good. I just have to do this chap. He is just amazing and wonderful because he's so alternative and he doesn't give a stuff about anything. And as I said, then it occurred to me there was a much more to this fellow than he actually even realized, that he had the freedom to dress like that. And as I said, women in South Africa can dress as we like. He also exemplifies freedom of expression, freedom of the press we have, freedom of association, freedom of movement, freedom of religion, a free judiciary and a civil society since 1994. And so I think that is fantastic. And we are extremely lucky to live in this country. I have done about 5 iterations of him. But now I'm done with him because the last one I didn't like particularly, and I think I've actually done him. So anyway, this is the first one. I have something on my screen here, which is, I don't know how to get rid of it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. This was the first one, and I quite enjoyed him because he was a real ruffian. He was on that exhibition in 2010. Then this one, he actually lives in a wine tasting room in Bot River, and he elicits a lot of comment, and people want to know about him. My brother-in-law, he likes him. My brother-in-law likes people like this because they're free spirits, which he is. Then there's another one, but now he's changed quite a lot, as you can see, and he's now got these fashionable pants around his ankles. He's put on a bit of weight as well. And then this one's quite a chirpy chap. I think he's in WAG in Kimberley. He's quite different again. They're all quite different personas of this one man. I don't know if he realizes it. I wish I could show him. Anyway, oopsie, no, that's the wrong one. And this is the last one. And I decided I didn't like this one too much anymore. He's got too full of himself. So I decided that was the end of it. Perhaps he doesn't want me to do him anymore. But anyway, I finished doing him. I don't do him anymore. And then now we're coming to some more difficult stuff. This is called Victim or Martyr. And I did this when Al-Qaeda were blindfolding their kidnapped people, their prisoners. And at the same time, the Americans were blindfolding the prisoners of war in Guantanamo Bay. So depending on which side of the fence you are, you're either a victim or a martyr. And this one is my rant about war. And that is contained in the title, which is Clown Regiment. This one is called Remorse or Redemption. I'm not sure quite what it's about. Again, these figures just put themselves together in my studio. And I don't know what is going on here. Whether this chap feels remorse or he's getting redemption, I don't know. This is a very important piece. Lucy, go away. Sorry, my cat is interfering. I want to talk about this piece. We all knew in 1985, we saw many photographs of Muammar Gaddafi, the Libyan murderous dictator. We saw many photographs of him in our press the whole time. But none of us knew what Nelson Mandela looked like. I asked around Grahamstown, and I found one person who knew what he looked like, and that was Andre Brink, the author. He knew. Nobody else did. And I thought this was a very interesting anomaly. So I decided to do a work on this. I'd been asked by APSA to be a guest artist because I won the 1983 Premier Award. So I took a photograph out of the newspapers of just an arbitrary fellow and stuck it in the middle and waxed it and glazed around it and the back of bars, and I rockrified it. And then I sent it off photograph. And it's a very innocuous piece, as you can see, but it was the title that was like a red rag to a bull, Mandela. I had the managing director of the sponsoring company on the phone to me, and I had the chairperson of APSA on the phone to me. And a lot of stuff went on, which I have recorded, but I'm not going to talk about now. But about 10 days before the exhibition opened, I had a phone call and I was asked, Anne, please, we want to work on the exhibition. Uncensored. So it went on uncensored. I will never compromise my work, no matter how unpopular it makes me. And in 1994, when Nelson Mandela became our state president, I was vindicated. It was a very happy day for me, a very happy day. And obviously those bars at the back were his prison bars. That's the front. This is the other heavy political piece. It was exhibited at the Brett Kebble 2004 exhibition. And the title is Never Again, because Nelson Mandela said, never again will South Africa suffer the abominations of apartheid. And this work is called Never Again. The walls are transparent perspex because governments can never hide their deeds. They will always be found out eventually. Brave people will always come forward and tell the truth. The truth will always out. It was a very small work because it was small incidents that happened on the 10th floor of John Foster Square, room 1026. And you can see there's an open window. You can't see the window, but in the sculpture at the side there is a perspex window and the chair is upturned. And something has happened. There's a palpable atmosphere. The two figures standing looking at the window. And you don't know if the person was pushed or he jumped. You never know. You'll probably never know. But not long after that, sorry, it's difficult to talk about this. This book came out. I was in Exclusive Books, and I saw this book, Ahmed Timur, A Quest for Justice. And there is that window on the 10th floor open. And this is a book by his nephew, Ahmed Timur. And I looked at it in Exclusive Books, and I started to cry. I was so overcome that the piece I'd done, it was there. It was absolutely, it still makes me upset. Sorry, pull myself together. Anyway, that was a very important piece for me. Now, then moving forward to today. This was in last year's exhibition that Henny curated. We were asked to do heads, and this is one of the heads that I did. And ostensibly looks like a punk hairstyle, but it isn't. It's actually the language of today. It's the alphabet of the computer. It's ones and zeros on his head, and it fills all our heads. So that's what's inside our head. So that's what that one's about. And this one, Henny didn't like this one, but I like it. It's a comment about blind consumerism, that in our materialistic society, we are blinded by consumerism. And the red lips said, oh. This is the last piece in this section. It's called The Forgotten Elderly, for all those people in old age homes who are forgotten. And this figure, whose clothes hang loosely on him, his arms are loosely by his side. His mouth is sort of half open and the eyes gaze out. vacantly. It's a very poignant, sad piece. I do still have it. But for me, it speaks volumes about the forgotten elderly. Okay, and now we're going to come to the last section of my work that I want to present to you today. As you know, I make these, as I mentioned, I grew up in East Africa, and the natural world has always been deeply embedded in me. And I became increasingly unhappy about what is going on, like we all are about what's going on in the world, in the environment. And in 2010, there was an incident happened, and I wrote a poem called Traveling Light Mother Earth. And out of that poured all sorts of things that I've observed over the years of human abuse on other animals, myself included. I didn't try to be, I'm holier than thou. I knew things that I had done wrong. And I didn't say so in this prose poem, but I was referring to what I had done. So suddenly in 2017, I'd had enough of humans. I'd had enough of us. And I decided I was going to devote the rest of my time to other animals and my work. So in 2017, I suddenly changed. But to go back to early, this coral was clay. I did in 1973. That's how far back I'd started to think subliminally about natural forms and natural animals. And this is the chiton. I told you to remember that figure that was on part of the national exhibition that I won, with that torso that had overlapping scales. And that's the chiton. The chiton is sort of a motif for me. And this is a sort of it shakes and it makes a noise. It's a pinch pot, but sort of like almost overlapping scales. It's something I return to often. That was the one in the National Gallery, National Exhibition. And then this is a porcelain bowl that I did, and you can see the overlapping formed motifs there. And again, this one as well. Those two pieces are in the Italian Museum. And then to go back, so my computer's going a bit fast. Yeah, sorry about that. Early work, butterfly motif, and then sort of organic lidded pots. I did a lot of masks, and you can see this sort of seeds and vegetative masks. I've done an awful lot of them, but this is the only vegetative one I could find to show you. This is a big raku bowl with all vegetation, as you can see, seeds, and I really enjoyed it. That's in the museum in Port Elizabeth, whatever it is now. This is a very early piece, 86 or something, with fishes, abstract plate. It's a plate sort of thing, as you can see, with stylized fish. And this is a fish head with a human head, raku fired. This is a big bowl I did in 2004, before I went into humans. That's a strepy, and that is a lephus, or it might be a cob, I think, I'm not sure. That's the lephus, or cob, I can't remember. And that's the back. It is this fish has been caught in the fishing net. This is some sort of, it's a backbone, animal backbone. It's a very sort of organic piece. And that's the back of it with this backbone. And then the same thing done in porcelain. And then a few pieces that references zebras. It's a smoke-fired plate referencing the beautiful coats of zebras. This is spoor from Dacre, and this is a stylized abstract form of giraffe skin patterns. I like doing wild dogs. This was the first one I did, and I deliberately have reduced it to its absolute essence. I was trying to get the essence of a wild dog. I still have this one. I will never let it go. I will always keep it. And here is two wild dogs, and the alpha dog and this submissive dog. That's the way the packs, you always have an alpha male and alpha female. And these are wild dogs on the hunt, as you can see. And this is kind of an environmental statement. these wild dogs are on a piece of wood, and the piece of wood is endangered, the same as the wild dogs are. We keep them in, having shot nearly all the wild dogs out there now, or enclosed. They're not free anymore. And the title is Trapped. And they stand on a piece of camphor wood. And camphor wood has been used so much over the world for furniture that it's now also endangered, and it is restricted. You're not allowed to cut it down. It's in restricted, guarded forests or wherever they keep them and grow them. So the both of them are endangered. And that was what I did. I think that was on an exhibition at Ebony. This is a marabou stork. I think they're extraordinarily beautifully ugly. And I love them because they're just so interesting. The porcelain piece. Also nice form, an anteater. I like anteaters. And let me go back. This was the first, I don't know why I decided to start doing rabbits. I don't know why, but I just, you know, when I have these wild changes that I do things like that, I just do. And I did the wild rabbits. These two rabbits, they were done during COVID, and they were done during the video that CSA asked me to do for Women's August months during COVID, whatever, it was 2021 or something. So whoever saw that video, these is what happened to them in the end. And they're sitting together one day, and I realized that they're actually friends. And the one on the left is Mr. Oscar Online, and the one on the right is Mr. Littleton COVID. So they're literally, and they're also to do with COVID. Crazy, I know, but they talk to each other. They don't talk to me. All these creatures, they all talk to each other in my studio. It's a very lively place in my studio. I also like goats and rams. So this is just a drawing, painting of a functional piece with change, a bowl that you could actually use. King penguins, marvelous creatures that go to incredible lengths to breed in the Antarctic and sub-zero temperatures, extraordinary creatures, and they're having a wonderful conversation themselves, chaps. A sperm whale, the giants of the ocean, who are extraordinary and amazing. And I also like doing baboons. And this baboon is sitting eating red berries. And it was a fun thing to do because that's what they do. And then I suddenly thought, as a really odd way out, thought that here is this very delicate little thing of red berries that is so ephemeral and so soft and so vulnerable and so unstrong. And it's tamed this powerful creature for a moment as it eats it. It's got it in its grip. And I just thought that was very interesting. Anyway, there's another one, a big, more powerful chap who also is eating red berries, and that's his back. What I'm trying to do in the work I'm doing now is to engender an understanding, an appreciation, and a respect for the sentience of other animals. So this is what I do with all my animals. Most of them are imaginary. And I'm just going to show you these last few pictures and you can decide for yourself. I'll just tell you the titles. You can see they're birds, bear-like figures. A rabbit-like figure. Sorry. That's a moose-like figure. A rabbit-like figure. Sentinels, the animal kingdom. A warrior of the sky. Hunter, the wild. Another hunter, listening for the prey. And the agony of other animals and what we do to them. And the gorilla, how long will he survive? Will his habitat remain enough for him to survive? And this one is called The Last Supper, and I've done a few installations that reference famous paintings. This one, obviously being The Last Supper, references Leonardo da Vinci's fresco in Milan, in church in Milan. And these animals are imaginary and represent all animals. And this is their last supper if we don't, as humans, do something about the destruction of their habitats and the killing of them. And this one was done during COVID in a way. No, it actually was done last year. And my mind was wandering around, and I was thinking, what would happen if all of us humans get wiped out? Because life is the world is a very unstable place, particularly now, in fact. And this is called the wild versus the domesticated. And I thought, what if the humans all got wiped out? What would happen to our domestic animals? Would the wild come out of the shadows like they did when we were locked down here in South Africa, and the penguins were walking through Simonstown because there were no humans? And my friends in England told me that in places like Wales, in the forests there, the animals came down into the city, into the towns, because there were no humans. So I decided to use a chess set as a metaphor for this. And I for the wild, you can see the wild there. You cannot see the hierarchy. You don't know who's a king or a queen in wild animals. You just don't, do you? And they don't make castles. So I used termite mounds as the castles in a chess game, and I used birds as pawns because birds fly free. And if you look at the back of the domesticated, the bishops have their tails. You can't see their tails because it would be very unseemly for bishops to have tails sticking out. So they don't have their tails showing. I used rabbit hutches as the castles, and I used rabbits, little pet rabbits, as the pawns, and they all wear collars indicating human control of their lives. And the king is wearing all the baubles and garters and things that kings normally do. And the queen is wearing also a garter, and she's got nail polish on her toes, and she's wearing a necklace. And the boxer is the knight because they fight, and the bishop is a bishop. And the squares, the yellow is the yellow of the bushveld, and the grey is the grey of asphalt, of tarmac and roads. And in the middle is a no man's land. And if there were no humans, what would happen? Would the wild take over? Or would some of the domestic animals survive? Who knows? They're little flecks of red, because undoubtedly there would be blood. So that's what that's all about. And that's the last. All I have now is a video. I don't know if you're going to show it, Rika. Is there time to show this video or not?
Yes, if you can stop sharing from your side, then I can share the video.
Okay, well, just before you do, I just want to talk about it briefly. How long have I got?
We have 15 minutes.
Okay, that should just about be enough. I'll be quick. It's called The Raft of the Medusa, and again, it is based on a famous painting by Jericho in the 19th century, when a French Royal Navy frigate ran aground in West Africa, and 150 sailors were abandoned. Eventually, they built a raft, and they set out to sea, and only 10 survived. And I have reinterpreted this into the 21st century. The Raft of Medusa, and mine are all animals, and they are at sea on the raft. And will they survive in the world as it is today, and what we humans are doing? The video, in the video, it rocks because a raft would rock on water, and they represent all species. And there is music, but that's what it's all about. The Raft of Medusa reinterpreted for wild animals in the 21st century.
the pathos in that, and
That's the end of the video and the presentation. And I find myself overwhelmed with, all the different phases of your work. It's all so imprinted with emotion and expression, whether it's animals or human. It's just incredibly moving.
Thank you. I'm glad.
It's incredible. I don't know if anybody else would like to ask Anne any questions. You can switch on your videos and sound as well.
yes, thank you. And I always thought you were a good ceramic sculptress. Now I know you are a very, very good. I enjoyed that so much. Well done, my friend.
Thank you very much, Susie. Thank you. Thank you.
There's no other questions,
nice
Anne.
chatting
I'm
with you.
curious. You're in a new phase or a new chapter of your life. You've moved to a smaller place, a new studio. What's next for you?
Sorry, my cat is sabotaging the place. Yeah, very new work coming. Extremely new. I haven't really started yet, but we have Wales in front of us, which southern right Wales. We've got a mother and a baby, and there's a pure white male, and the sea is having the most extraordinary effect on me. But I haven't yet worked it out and come to terms with it. But the sea is just, I don't have words for it at the moment, but it's work that I will probably be doing for the next year. The sea is getting very deep inside my psyche. It's something I've got to come to terms with. We all know the sea. We've been to the sea, we go to the sea. This is something else. It's something completely different. It's more fundamental and universal. It's extraordinary. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what it is. But thank you very much.
It's been quite a journey, to look at your history, and I think for yourself to go back in your journey as well. What was the biggest influence for you, in terms of these changes? I know that you've got these phases, but if you look back now, do you think the South African politics had the biggest influence in your work?
It had a very big influence during apartheid, which I found so incredibly abominable and very difficult to come to terms with. And it is just so incredible that the troubles we have now is nothing compared to what was experienced before. But it's the natural world, really. It's a very complex world, and I'm sort of a global situation, living in different countries. My vision is very broad, but deeply embedded is the natural world, and I think that is actually the basis of what is the greatest influence. Look, there are many wonderful artists whose work I absolutely love. I don't want to do what they do, but I love them, and they enrich my lives. I just feel so lucky to be in this genre where we can make art, do art, enjoy art, and so on. It's just and living here, it's just the best place in the world to live, I think, quite honestly.
Oh, I agree with you totally. What I find very interesting is the phase where you did a lot of rifle firing, low firing. Are you still doing that technique, or are you now on to electrical firing?
I stopped. No, I don't. I stopped in about 2004. I stopped doing smoke firing. No, I just fire an electric kiln now.
Okay.
Yes, I just fire an electric kiln. I don't do any other type of firing. No, that's it. In the old days, you couldn't get glazes. You had to make them. Today, I would still make my own glazes, but you can use so many other materials in so many other ways. But who knows? Once you know, I'm incredibly curious person. I'm terribly curious. It's one of my strongest characteristics, and I've no idea, quite honestly, what I'm going to do. I am going to do some more land art with Andre Bontes, who lives not far away, and I love her work, and I love her, and she and I will do things together. We have done work together a little bit, and I'm hoping to do more work with her along the way. And the world is our oyster. You know, who knows what's going to happen? I only know as it goes along, and I'll only be able to tell you when I've done it. And I'm often doing things, I don't know why I'm doing them, but I'm doing them anyway. That's actually how I operate quite a lot of the time. But
Well,
that's what I can tell you for them.
Well, I think that you've inspired so many, and also so many who will still watch the video, with your rich history of your work, the use of the symbolism, the use of emotion, and to convey your messages. It's just incredible and so rich. And I'm so thankful that you took us on your journey to relive it and see work that we would never have been able to see all concised in a presentation. Thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity of asking me. I really appreciate it.